And so when people begin to practice, after hearing about the technique, they sit there and they attempt to do meditation. And doing, according to the personality, doing involves trying. You know, if you're going to do something, you try to do it, right? It's an effort, right? You make an effort. This is the life of the personality. This is the indoctrination of the personality, is to learn how to do things so that you can make things happen in life. You know, one of the teachers says that we are action figures, you know. So the personality would find it very difficult to meditate, because the personality would sit there and attempt to try to meditate and do meditation. And I can see it when I look at some people's faces when they're new. They look like they're passing a brick or something. And that's way not meditation, right? So it's important to understand that in meditation, if you're going to be successful, you have to begin to understand the reality of being rather than doing. You know, being doesn't involve action. It doesn't take any action to be, number one. And being is something that's already true. You're already being, you know. Being is just another way to talk about awareness, you know. Being is just about existing. You're being, you're existing. Yeah. But most people don't know how to be. They only know how to do. So when they go to practice meditation, they try and do meditation and end up sitting there trying hard to meditate and then feeling frustrated because they didn't seem to succeed. And I'm not sure whether they didn't succeed because they don't know what it would look like if they did. You know, like, how do you know you're meditating, right? But they obviously have some idea about it, and most people's ideas about it is that, you know, it's something to do with being in a trance type of thing, you know, like you're going to go into a trance. This is the basic understanding about meditation. Navel gazing is the old word for meditation, right? But that's actually not accurate at all. And because of that typical misunderstanding, people get frustrated and they give up attempting to meditate. I've heard people who came to this class and you know, they're going to try it. Right? That's the way the personality works. I'm going to try to meditate. I'm going to see if I like it. I'm going to see if it's something that I want to practice. And then they come and sit, and after the practice, they say, "Oh, my mind was racing. This isn't for me. My mind was racing. I was too restless. I can't do this. This is too hard. I can't." Well, the reason they can't do it is because they didn't understand how to do it in the first place. And even after you hear how to do meditation, even after you hear how to practice meditation, your personality is a conditioned reality. Your personality is conditioned. It's not something that you necessarily are aware of. It's not something that you're necessarily aware of, that anything that you attempt to practice that's new, you're going to try hard to do it. And that may be true. I mean, this is a gym, and that may be true for a lot of other things here, you know, to try hard to work out, or try hard to lift weights, or try hard to run, or try hard to do whatever you're doing exercise-wise. You know, that's kind of something we know about, that type of thing. But the problem with this in regard to how to do it and how to practice is that it's so easy, you can't do it. You literally cannot do meditation. It's too easy. You cannot do it. Because why? Because it involves doing nothing. And most people aren't very familiar with that. It involves simply relaxing the body. It involves simply allowing the mind to calm down. And the way we allow the mind to calm down is we stop interacting with it. That's how we you keep your mind busy by getting involved with it all day long, getting involved with your thinking, getting involved with your imaginary images, thinking about the past and the future. thinking about, what there is to do and how much there is to do and how hard it is to do a lot of the things we have to do and how stressful it is to do the things that we have to do. And here we have an opportunity to do nothing, an opportunity to simply be, an opportunity to sit still and be quiet and be silent and not move, and really start to allow the body to relax and let go, and really allow the mind to calm down. And the way the mind calms down is we move attention from the thinking activity. And the thinking activity is something that most people are involved with. Most people call their involvement with the thinking activity their life, right? Yeah, I'm going to think about it, right? Let's think about it. So the thinking is something that people think is very important and very valuable, because it is what we use to understand everything, right? We think about things. We think about our life. We think about the things we're learning, right? And we use thinking as a modality of existing in the world, right? When you get up in the morning, the first thing that happens is you start to think about the day, right? And all the rest of it, right? Well, one of the things, the teachings, and this is one of the reasons why the teachings that are an essential aspect of practicing meditation is necessary. The teachings are necessary in order to practice real meditation. I'm not talking about stress reduction. I'm not talking about mindfulness-based stress reduction. That's a very popular form of quote-unquote meditation. I don't actually consider that meditation. I consider that practicing a relaxation response. Because of stress reduction means what? It means you learn how to relax the body, you learn how to calm the mind, you learn how to maintain that, you learn how to experience what it's like when you're really relaxed. So you understand that there's a possibility called being relaxed. Well, but that's actually not the meditation that comes from the ancient teachings. That's not the meditation that the Buddhist monks are doing in the monasteries. That's not the meditation that brings along with it the possibility of transforming your life. It's not the meditation that brings along with it the opportunity and the possibility of what they call enlightenment or waking up in the ancient teachings. And so the method of meditation that I teach is the method that involves the possibility of transformation and waking up, because I'm a psychologist and my understanding is that if this practice can offer you this, why the hell wouldn't you why wouldn't you be interested in that? I've often said here in the class that if you learn to meditate the way I'm speaking about it and you practice it consistently, you will be involved in a psychotherapeutic process. Well, how is that? What do you mean? How is that the case? Well, first of all, one of the things that is a primary understanding in these teachings is that the voice in your head is not you. Yeah, so right away, the idea that you're going to use thinking to do meditation gets nixed right away. The voice in your head is not you. Not only is that a matter of understanding that will help you learn to meditate correctly, but it will change your life if you practice paying attention to the voice with the understanding that it is not you. That itself is transformational. That will change the way your life is, because mostly the way people operate in the world is they consider the voice in their head to be them, right? And second, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is that they consider the voice in their head to be, what's the best word? Perfect. Yeah. You never thought about it, right? You never considered the fact that you consider the voice in your head to be perfect. Well, what I mean by that is, how often do you question what you think? How often do people question what they think? I mean, that's one of the sources of a major source of conflict in the world, is that I think one thing and you think another thing and we're both right, so something's got to give, right? That's called conflict, right? So the fact that you think that you're the voice in your head, number one, and number two, you think that the things that get thought of there are perfect. They're always true. Your thoughts are always true, right? You follow them because they're always true, right? Well, that's just not real. That's just not accurate. They're not always true. And when they're not true, you consider it to be a fault of yours. You consider it to be something that you've somehow failed, right? And if they're not true, it's very often the case that you attribute the fact that your thinking failed to something outside of yourself. Yeah? I thought it was this way, but then it turned out it was that way because of the circumstances or because of the people. But now I'm going to think more about that. And if I think more about that and analyze it, then I'll have better thinking. I'll do better thinking, and I'll have less mistakes like that, right? Well, this turns out to be a source of a lot of frustration and a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, right? That's why cognitive therapy became popular, right? Cognitive therapy, right? Do therapy with people where you analyze their thought processes and help them learn to pay attention to what they're thinking so that they can realize that what they're thinking is causing them to do things that don't work. And ends them up anxious, right? Because, why are you anxious? Well, because everything seems to be so unstable. You know, I seem to be so unstable. I'm not sure of myself. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life and so forth. And so anxiety becomes an issue. It's a symptom of the personality. Or another symptom of the personality is depression. Well, what's depression? Well, if you look at it through these understandings, depression is when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of being who you are. That's a good description of depression as far as I'm concerned. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired of being who you are. That could lead to suicide, right? Yeah, it does lead to suicide for some people. So these teachings and this practice is really a solution to all of that. It's a solution to all of that. And if you learn how to meditate properly and you understand what's possible through meditation, it can be psychotherapeutic. Your personality can change. Your behavior can change. The quality of your life can change. The things that you want more than anything else can be had. And the things that you want more than anything else are what? Happiness. Who doesn't want that, right? Happiness. Peace of mind. Who doesn't want that? Satisfaction. Who doesn't want that, right? These are the things that people are doing all the thinking about, right? Pursuit of happiness, trying to relax, finding peace, right? All of those ways of understanding have to do with the idea that these are activities. You're going to be happy if you do the right things. You're going to be happy if you get the right things. You're going to be peaceful if you learn somehow about how to do peacefulness, how to be peaceful in life. And you're going to be satisfied when you get what you want. That's the way all that gets understood, right? And so people are in the pursuit of those things. People are pursuing happiness, right? People are pursuing peace. I mean, it's even in the Constitution of the United States. It guarantees you the right to pursue happiness, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, what if that's not true? What if happiness can never be had by pursuing it? Then you, as a good American with a Constitution, are on the wrong road. And there's a lot of evidence for that. All you have to do is look right now at the fact that this country is in the middle of a mental health crisis, right? Addiction has gone through the roof. Depression has gone through the roof. You know, anxiety has gone through the roof. Instability, uncertainty, it's all over the place, right? People are going nuts. People are going crazier than they have in a long time, especially because of the insane politics we're dealing with right now, along with everything else, right? And part of what we're dealing with is the fact that human beings are destroying the environment. Human beings are incapable of getting along with one another, even with all the psychology, even with all the understandings that we have, even with all the high technology, we can't even get along with one another. And the countries that are the strongest countries and the most powerful countries in the world are spending more money on weapons than they are on taking care of the population. If it's true, if the reality that people understand to be reality is actually reality, then that makes sense. It actually makes sense. Because the reality that people understand to be reality is the reality in which you and I are separate from one another, okay? We're separate from one another. We're different from one another, right? The world is, there's only so much money, there's only so much resources, there's only so much food, there's only so much water, right? And we're separate from one another, right? So the game's on. It's you or me. It's a you or me world, isn't it? It's a you or me world. Either we have it. That's why we're having such a problem right now with people coming into the country from Mexico. because they want what we have. You know, they want the quality of life that we have, right? It's a you or me world, right? So the basic understanding, the basic reality, and the basic understanding we have of who we are and what's real, how reality is, puts us in a position where we feel threatened. We feel threatened by one another, because if it's you or me world, then there's only so much to go around, right? And so if push comes to shove, I can't let you take what I'm supposed to have. And this goes on, on a daily basis, and it causes war, it causes conflict, it causes conflict and fighting between people, it causes fear. We have a fear-based political system, right? And so it's a bad situation. And the thing about it is that meditation is actually a solution to that problem. It's actually a solution to that problem. I feel comfortable in saying to you that if you take the time and if you make the commitment to study meditation and learn the ancient teachings that are an essential part of practicing meditation, and you do it consistently every day, you'll start to experience relief. You'll start to experience relief. And the first thing you'll start to experience relief from is you. So it's like one of my teachers said, this is not offering freedom for you, this is offering freedom from you. So your biggest problem is you. Your biggest problem is who you think you are. Your biggest problem is that you think you're this physical body, and you think that you're this personality, and you think you're the thinker of your thoughts, and you think your thoughts are the truth, and you live in a world where everybody's separate from everybody else, and we're all under threat all the time, and it's a stressful situation, right? And you're trying to make that work. That's the human life, and you're trying to make that work. And you keep failing at it, but when you fail at it, you just turn in another direction. I failed in marriage, so I'll try and make more money and be successful that way, so I can be happy at least that I have money, right? So we live in a society that making money is sacred. Making money is more important than church. There is, isn't it? It's sacred, right? And so everybody's trying to make enough money to be in control and have security, and be satisfied and be happy, even though the evidence tells us that we're on the wrong road. One of the highest suicide rates is lottery winners. Well, that's interesting, Everybody thinks if I had all the money that you can win in a lottery, that I'd be happy. That would be an answer to all my problems. And yet the people that win the money become high suicide risks. Why? Because if you think that that's the answer, and now you get the money, right? And in a week or two from having won all that money, you're crazier than you ever were. You have more anxiety than you ever did, right? You have more fear than you ever did. You don't know how to deal with having this much money. People are coming after you to try and take the money away, right? So now it's like and you thought this was the answer. And the answer turns out to be makes things worse than they ever were. So, sitting still, being quiet, allowing the mind to calm down, allowing the body to calm down. And if you do that along with the teachings, and you study the teachings, which are telling us you've made a mistake. These teachings tell us you've made a mistake. This goes all the way back to all of the great wisdom teachings. You've made a mistake. What's the mistake? You think you're something you're not. That's the beginning of your problem. You think you're something you're not. You think you're a physical body, and you think you're a personality. And you couldn't help thinking that because you were born into a situation where everybody thought that was true. And so how are you going to question that? That's the reality that you were, you learned to live in, right? Well, even though that may be the case, even though the herd is flying off a cliff, running off a cliff, you don't have to keep running with that herd. You can stop and take a look and ask yourself, am I missing something? Am I missing something? What does it mean when they say you're not who you think you are, when you've made this essential mistake? Well, what it means is, first of all, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you are, and you don't know what reality is. And you're trying to live your life in that condition. No wonder it doesn't work. And when you multiply that by 8 billion, look at the mess. Look at the mess that's going to exist. You got 8 billion people, most of whom don't know who they are, and they don't know what reality is, and they're trying as hard as they can to live their life and be happy, get peace and satisfaction. And it's not working. It's not working for most people. So what do? They blame each other. Watch the news. They blame each other. They blame the government, right? They blame the devil if you're a fundamental religious person, right? But the last thing they do is look and see, well, maybe all this isn't working because I have made a fundamental mistake about what I am and what reality is. And the ancient wisdom teachers help us to correct that mistake. But then they tell us to understand the correction, to understand what you actually are, which is not hard, it's not a mystery, it's not hidden, it's not a secret. What you are is obvious all the time. It's obvious what you are. But you're preoccupied paying attention to what you're thinking all the time, so you never slow down and stop long enough to pay attention and look and see what's here. What is here? What's happening here, right? Well, the ancient teachings tell us that what we are is awareness itself. Okay. Now, you can, if you study the ancient teachings of Advaita Vedanta, for example, they get into very elaborate developments of this understanding. And they answer all your questions, and they deal with all your arguments about it, right? So that you realize, well, the evidence speaks for itself. You know, the fact that that awareness is your true nature speaks for itself, because without awareness, the game's over. If awareness wasn't in your chair right now, you wouldn't exist, would you? Yeah, so everything else comes after awareness. That's number one, that's primary, right? So the ancient wisdom teachings tell us that's you. The awareness is you. Well, now it gets interesting because the awareness is not physical. The awareness, and you can see this if you do some of the exercises that are available, like the invitation that Muji does, or you can see this just through practicing meditation over time. Yeah? You start to realize that not only is awareness my true nature, but this awareness only exists in the present moment. This awareness has no form and has no shape. This awareness has no age, and when you get to my age, that's good news. This awareness has no age, right? This awareness is inherently, innately happy. Oh, that's interesting. It means the pursuit of happiness is over because it's not out there, it's here. Happiness is here. Well, how is it here? Well, this awareness that is our natural state is happy. Why would it be happy? Well, the reason it's happy is because it exists. It's happy because it exists. That's something that's not even on the radar for most people, right? The fact that you exist, is the fact that you exist a source of happiness? No, because you learned that it doesn't matter. You learned that that doesn't count. Happiness is something you're going to pursue. You don't already have it. And that started by making the mistake of thinking you're a personality and you're a physical body. Well, but the ancient teachings tell us you're not a physical body, you're not a personality, you are the awareness. That is your true nature, and that awareness is naturally happy all the time. Why? Because it's its nature to be happy. It's satisfied all the time because it doesn't need anything, it doesn't want anything, it is just here, it is just being in the world, experiencing what's happening in the world. That's all it's doing, right? Doesn't want anything, doesn't need anything. It's not a man or a woman, it's not a physical body. This is all available for you to notice yourself, because if awareness is what you are, it must be possible for you to notice what I'm talking about. It's there all the time for you. Now, you may not notice it because you're so preoccupied with thinking until you can get some time out of the thought process so that you can notice what I've just talked about. It won't necessarily be real for you because you'll be thinking about it instead of experiencing it, you see. So what are we practicing in meditation? We're practicing relaxing the body, letting the mind calm down, and the way we're going to have the mind calm down is we're going to pay attention to the thought process. And instead of staying involved with it, we're going to move our attention over here to being aware of the body breathing instead of thinking. Now, that takes practice because thinking is so automatic, right? You wake up in the morning and it's how you enter the world, by thinking about things, right? So it's going to take practice to come out of that thought process and simply spend time over here being aware of the body breathing. So it's going to take practice. But if you do the practice, what will happen gradually over time, you will find that you can start to be aware of something here that you couldn't be aware of there. You can start to be aware here that awareness is now the reality of what you are, and that awareness is aware of this body breathing. It's not this body breathing because it can see the body, it can be aware of the body breathing, and it's the awareness. And you begin to understand that this is an experience that's possible for you to have of who you are. And when you start to have this experience of who you are, a whole world shows up of this awareness that's always been here, but was never really understood, never really seen, never really recognized. And so now this other world exists where there is happiness, satisfaction, and peace, and it's available 24/7, it's available all the time because it's you, and wherever you are, it's there. So then the game becomes, okay, first of all, I have to recognize that that's the truth. That's the first thing, right? They call that enlightenment, or they call that waking up, right, in some places, right? And all that really means is that you get to a place where you can actually recognize yourself as awareness. You actually see it directly. It's not something you learned. It's not a concept. It's something that you're experiencing to be true. You see it to be true. You experience it to be true. Now, the you that experiences that, when you experience that, so that's the first thing, that's the first goal in the practice, right? To experience your true nature. And the you that experiences that true nature is not the personality. So then you may say, well, then who's experiencing my true nature? And the answer is, your true nature is experiencing your true nature. And that's all there is. Your personality is nothing but a process. Your personality is nothing but a conceptual understanding. Your personality does not actually exist. Well, this is pretty dramatic things to find out. These are pretty dramatic things, not only to find out, but these are pretty dramatic things to actually experience to be true. And so as this process goes on, now there's a conviction about this truth. There's a conviction. This might be what they meant when they say the truth shall set you free. This might be what they meant when they say know thyself, okay? But it's not going to happen by itself. The practice needs to be there so you can continue to spend more time over here. When you begin to practice and you move your attention from the thought process over to the awareness of the body breathing, in the very beginning it bounces right back into thinking, doesn't it? Bounces right back into thinking, right? And so if you're doing meditation, you're saying, oh, I'm not doing it right? I must not be doing it right. I'm supposed to stop thinking. No, that's not how you practice meditation. All you do is keep moving it back. This is like training a puppy not to pee on the rug. You know, every time the puppy moves away from the paper, you go and you pick him up and you bring him back to the paper and you give him a treat for being at the paper, right? So it's the same thing. The repetition over time of bringing your attention back, bringing it back, bringing it back, bringing it back. And then gradually, this ability to maintain attention on awareness starts to be something that there's enough time here and enough experience here and enough sense of this being who you are that it begins to expand. It begins to expand. And what happens eventually is that in your everyday life, when you're not practicing formal meditation, this starts to show up. This starts to show up. So instead of there just being me thinking or me feeling or me doing, now there's an awareness of thinking, feeling, and doing that you didn't know existed at all. Not only is there awareness of the thinking and the feeling and the doing, but this is now recognized to be your true nature. It's a game changer. It's a game changer. When you get to a point where the transition occurs, when you wake up and you realize your true nature and you begin to look through these eyes from there instead of from your thinking process, right? You start to see a different world. You start to see a different reality. You start to understand that now there is an awareness that is aware of what's happening, and it's free from the effect of what's happening. It's free. This is the freedom that's spoken of when we talk about awareness. It's unaffected by what's happening. All that it's doing at all times is simply being present. That's why they use the word present. It's simply being present. It's simply available to experience life. That's what awareness is. It's just available to experience life. It's not interested in your stories. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't want anything. So if you can have this experience with some degree of consistency and then be in the world that way, it's a different life. You're leading a different life. That's why you see people who have done the practice and understand the teachings, and you see how calm they are, how peaceful they are, how happy they are, how available they are, how they can be related to any other human being without any problems, because they understand that we're not separate selves, we are the same awareness. That's another thing about awareness that is a teaching. You realize that all the people in the world are one. All the people in the world are experiencing the exact same experience of their true nature as awareness. The only problem is most of them don't know that. Most of them are still stuck in a state of mind, still stuck in the past, still stuck in identifying with the physical body. So I hope that just by listening to what I'm saying, you get a sense of this possibility. There's a real possibility for freedom. There's a real possibility for happiness. And if it's true that we're not the physical body, then there's a real possibility for what Jesus Christ promised the people that were listening to him teach. He said, I offer you life everlasting. Well, you know, if you think if you're a physical body, well, that's a miracle. That's a miracle. No, it's not a miracle. It's already true. That's why he could promise it, because it's already true. If it's true that you're not physical, that means that when the body dies, that you're not going to die. If it's true that you're not the personality, that means when the personality dies with the body, that you're not going to die. But only if you recognize the truth, and only if you practice the recognition of the truth sufficiently, right, to calm the system, because the system's afraid of dying, isn't it? Yeah, the system's afraid of dying. So over time, you have to continue to do the practice, and you have to deepen the understanding, and you have to get more able to be free from fear and more able to be free from what's not true. And if you do that, when death comes, it'll be a very easy death. It will be truly a transition rather than an end of anything. And the ancient teachers tell us this is the truth. This isn't a theory. This is actually true. But it is so radically different from the way most human beings understand who they are and what reality is, that they consider that to be, you know, that's bullshit. That's how most people view these teachings. And these teachings are readily available to anybody that wants to read them and practice them. They're readily available. But very few people are even interested, because most people's conditioning is running the show 100%. Which means that, hey, I'm playing the game I know the game to be, and I'm playing the game to win the game. I don't have time for that navel-gazing business that you people are getting involved with. So, if you get the understanding, if you understand what's possible through these practices and through these teachings, I say if you really get it, if you really understand this possibility, that you can't help being committed to this. You'd be crazy not to be committed to waking up. That would be insanity not to be committed to waking up, given what it has to offer. And maybe if you're not sure about it, or you find it hard to understand these things, maybe what you need to do is investigate it a little further, inquire into it. Look at some of these teachings, read some of these teachings, and see if you can get what it's pointing to and what it's trying to present to people as a possibility. That's why Jesus Christ and Buddha and Muhammad and all the other mystics and leaders and spiritual leaders in all time, you know, have always tried to share this with people, because they understand that unless you get this, you're going to suffer and die. And the worst part of it is, if death isn't real, if death isn't true, but you believe it is, and so you're fearful and you're suffering from your fear and you're terrified at the moment of your death, and if death isn't real right after that death occurs, right after that clinical death occurs, right, you experienced the truth, right? But you wasted your whole life suffering. You wasted your whole life suffering. Right? They have done research. And this is what I mean when I say these things that I'm talking about, the evidence speaks 100% for what I'm talking about and 100% for what is not true. They've done research now. We have brain science, and they've done research now that shows the brain changes dramatically when you practice meditation, which means you're a different person because that's the center of operation, isn't it? If that changes, then you're different if that changes, and it changes in a very dramatic way. And they've done research that shows that people who have near-death experiences or the body's pronounced clinically dead come back, and there's a lot of research that says this, if you can look it up if you want, near-death experiences. People that are clinically dead and come back, and they report the exact same thing, that before the body stopped, before the heart stopped and the brain stopped functioning and I was clinically dead, there was a lot of distress. I'm dying, right? But after all that stopped, the stress stopped, totally stopped, and it was just peace. In fact, so much so that people who had that experience said, I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to come back. It was great. It was beautiful. It was beautiful, beyond anything I ever imagined experiencing in my human life. And even though that's what they report, it doesn't change the fact that most people still believe the same bullshit.